Okay, so we are going to let's let this play through once, all the way. Okay, so if we work from back to front, let me actually get this in full screen. Oh, that's kind of cool. Not what I wanted, but go full screen. What the heck's going on? Oh, maybe this is full screen. I don't know. Okay. Anyways, if we work from the back forward, okay, we can see after we've thrown this ball where all of our energy is going. We're essentially jogging to the plate. Our shoulders and our hips are facing straight to our target this entire time. Very straight to the target. And where's all of our weight going? We can look with our right leg and see that our body weight is shifting to the right, and also a lot of energy still in our body going straight to our target. So if you envision someone swinging a bat, once they make contact, they continue that rotational pattern with both their hips and their shoulders. We don't see guys swinging the bat, making contact with the ball, and then after they make contact with the ball, their entire body just continues to go towards the pitcher, right? They're rotating through their swing, rotating through their release. So if we pull up another video here, really anything that's from the side, we'll be able to see how much rotation. You can just go right here and be able to see at release how much more rotation is going to occur. Boom. Okay, coming all the way around. Why? Because in order to throw the baseball, we have to be rotating, right? We have to be rotating to make this throw. And if we're rotating with violence, we're not going to be able to stop that rotation. It's going to keep on rotating and keep on rotating. Okay, so if our body continues to have energy going straight to our target with our body not rotating, that means we're not putting as much of our power into our throw as we possibly can. We're not swinging with as much strength as we could if we don't swing all the way through the ball through contact, and we just swing at contact and stop. Okay, so what do we got to be thinking about then to get that more power to be coming through the throws, so that we're finishing our rotation of the throw with violence that causes us to continue to rotate? So if we continue to back up, okay, we can see that our body begins to get down there, but it doesn't want to rotate. It's just the upper body that's trying to rotate, but the lower half wants nothing to do with it. Alright, so if we keep you here and get to another video, let's use one that's a little bit slower so we can see better. And let's just say it's right here. Back you up to release. It's you so different than Ray Black. He's got a much longer stride than you, so there's some things that are happening differently. Let's go with Brian Wilson instead. Okay, so we get him to release. Boom, release. Okay, so here's you at release, and here's Wilson at release. Okay, relatively very similar positions all around. Okay, now let's watch your next few movements here. Okay, now let's watch Brian Wilson's next few moves here. So now we are back to very similar positions again. So if we continue yours through, look how much more rotation there is coming in that upper body that looks like violence, right? It looked like a lot more turning over of those shoulders here than we had at release, which is when all that rotation occurs, right? So if we watch how intense the rotation is here, boom, and then we get all of this rotation, and then we look over here and see there's not as much of that shoulders coming through after. Why? It's because he used that energy of rotation here to start getting it going more aggressively. And now it's just the rotation and the finish to come. Okay, and we watch at the very end here how everything is coming around. And then he lands balanced. Versus yours coming around and it doesn't. It just gets barely to the side, that back leg. And then it falls forward, next leg has to go forward, and now we're jogging because there's so much more energy and power in our body going to the target that we didn't take and rotate aggressively around into that throw. Okay, so you have a lot of energy going down the mound to the target. You have the ability to create energy in a linear way, meaning from where you're standing to the target. But now we got to take that linear drive and we got to start rotating it. Okay, that's the reason we create linear drive, is to increase our rotational power. And ultimately, how we rotate our body is what's going to ultimately help create more velocity. So we can see when we get into foot strike, which is what we call this position here, when that front foot hits the ground, we back this up, boom, it's in the ground. Okay, at this point here, we need to have had this back foot, back knee, and back hip drive out and rotate all the way through so that our belt buckle is facing the catcher. We can see here that our belt buckle is more or less facing third base dugout. Okay? We need our lower half to completely rotate and fire prior to front foot strike. If we successfully are able to get our hips all the way turned to the position they are here, at the point in time in which your front foot hits the ground here, your hips look like this, then we can say your hips have gone through full rotation and drive leading into front foot strike. But we can see once your front foot gets into foot strike right here, our hips have not began to rotate at all. Our front side leg, our stride leg, has done a good job clearing the way to allow that back hip to come through. Front foot toe facing the target, front of our knee going towards the target, which is then getting our femur in line with the target as well, which puts our left hip in a position that frees up the right hip to get in line with it. Okay? Your foot's in a position to allow that to happen, but now we got to start understanding that we need to begin rotating and driving here. At this position, we need to start firing this back knee, back hip, and then eventually back foot and ankle, driving through our big toe to start firing these hips, so that way they just don't stay in this linear direction with this belt buckle facing us the entire time. It needs to start rotating. We can see that belt buckle barely rotates. It goes from here, where it's been the whole time, to rotating very little, getting into the ground. And then we can see how much more it rotates after it gets into the ground. Okay? The position that we're trying to achieve at foot strike is upper lower half separation. And what that looks like if we use one of the best to do it, and we look at Aroldis Chapman here. Okay, so let's get him here so that way we can keep you in frame at a certain point. Okay, so let's get this up here, and let's just watch this one time through without stopping it. And then we'll play it once more, and we'll pause it at his front foot strikes, so right when his front foot gets into the ground. Okay? You can actually back it up to there. Alright, so we can notice where his belt buckle is facing, the catcher. See where your belt buckle is facing, third base dugout. Okay? What we do see is that his upper body at this position here that his lower body is in at foot strike, how his chest is still fighting to stay back, fighting to not rotate through yet. Okay, this is what we call upper lower half separation, or hip shoulder separation. His hips have gone in one direction and fired, while the upper half has separated itself from them and have remained in the same position they have been. We look at yours and we have minimal upper lower half separation. We don't get the belt buckle like Chapman's here, like we said, until you're here. Okay, and now your guys' upper bodies look very similar. Okay, your lower bodies look very similar. But we know that Chapman's energy has been driving out towards the plate this entire time. It's been driving and now rotating. Rotating. We watch that back knee start to drive inwards. Now the back foot is going to begin to drive out through the big toe, through the big toe, through the big toe, to then get the hips to start to pop and fire, right, leading into front foot strike. Okay, we take yours through that same process. Okay, and we can see that the back knee never really begins to fire inwards. It just kind of gets pulled forward with that front leg that's being extended so far out. And it's not until now is it beginning to rotate. But we can see as it's beginning to rotate how that front foot is getting put straight down to the ground. Back knee begins to fire, foot gets put straight into the ground. Back knee fires, front foot gets put straight into the ground. We watch Chapman here when his front knee begins to fire right here, how his foot's still going outwards. It's still gaining ground. It's still going towards the target. And now it's going into ground. Even now, look, it's gaining ground. Gaining ground, that front foot. Okay. So how is Chapman able to begin to fire this front knee, back knee, getting them going, and not just have it go straight down from here? And this is when we driving out that back foot through that big toe gets us that, boom, watch the back toe now begin to extend and drive. Extend and drive. Extend and drive through that big toe to keep gaining ground as that back knee is firing this whole time. Back knee begins to fire inwards now, and he's gaining ground while he's doing that. Back knee fires now, and he's gaining ground while he does that. We go back to yours, back knee, and like we said, it's not firing right now. It's just tilting inwards. Tilt, 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 tilt. Now I fire. And as you're firing now, that nothing's gaining ground. It's just getting put straight down to the ground. So all that linear drive that you began to get is now just, instead of going towards the target, it's just falling down into the ground. Okay, and now because once we get into foot strike here, because the hips have not fired, the shoulders have not fired, foot's in the ground, time for the shoulders to start rotating. So now as the shoulders rotate, they're going to have to rotate the hips as well. So the shoulders aren't now working independently of everything. It's having to pull along your entire lower body. So we'll see every time this back shoulder begins to rotate through, the back hip is rotating through, but more or less moving up. So every time that shoulder is rotating, the hips are rotating. Not only are the hips rotating, but we can see this front knee that's in the ground is also having to buckle outwards towards first or towards your glove side to be able to allow that right backside hip to get out in front. See that knee there? Buckling out. Boom, it's buckling out. Buckling out. So now, not only do we not have lower body energy rotating us to help us increase our upper body rotation to throw, we also have our lower body essentially stepping in the bucket, for lack of better terms, for hitting, and allowing our hips to open up and fly outwards instead of staying closed and driving to the ball. So we're losing power that we already don't have a whole lot of because the lower half isn't creating a lot of power. So the little power that your lower half is able to create, we're losing it in this back knee buckling outwards. And like we said, then the shoulders are having to pull the hips through. And because the hips never really fired, that's why it's just the upper half rotating so hard and aggressively after you threw. Because in order to get this hip to get around, there's so much force that your upper body has to do just to get this leg off the ground, let alone get it rotated around to your side. And by that time now, it's kicking out in front, and all your energy is going out in front just because of how out of sync your entire delivery and your entire body is. We go back to Chapman here and see that lower body go, producing all that energy, boom, into foot strike. And now after foot strike, because the hips have fully fired, that energy from their rotation gets shot up into his upper body to make his upper body rotation be exponentially more aggressive, more powerful, and the upper body is rotating without having to pull the hips and the back leg through. So now all that aggressive rotation is to throw the baseball, not to get the lower body, back leg, and hips out in front and through. And now we can see with just how much more ease this throw becomes. Just all upper body doing the work. And that's how the arm then becomes stress-free. It's how the arm then can produce 100 miles an hour. And then everything continues to rotate. Look at this. At this point already, his hips are drastically more rotated through than yours are. And then they keep going until he gets into that back leg, getting back into contact, and he's balanced. But we can see everything for him is angled towards the entrance of third base dugout as a lefty. So yours would be angling towards that entrance of the first base dugout, which would be like behind your back of your hair here. Yours is like barely left-handed batter's box before it continues to walk straight towards the target.